They don't want you holding physical metal in your possession. That is then out of their reach.
But I think what's going to happen is already happening, and people are stacking metals, particularly here it's gold. I mean, the village I live in is functions almost exclusively on barter.
Does
Um,
it?
they are preparing to abandon currency, to be honest with you. Everything I'm hearing about coming out of Western Germany is just, Western Europe is just frightening, and UK. Guns, gold, and the garden, right? Aren't those
Exactly.
the
I think that it's critically important for people to see other people moving forward because some people get very, very stuck, especially when they continue to believe Wall Street lies.
yeah.
You know,
Well, not even believing. It's very easy to not believe those lies, but it's very difficult to just get off of your butt. And it's easy to not believe the lies, to know that this is coming, to believe in it. But it's another thing to actually start. And okay, next step for me was like research the solar. That's easy to do, but it's still time consuming, right? So how much do we need? All that kind of stuff, and then
hmm
get their consultation as well. And then you then they give you the quote, and you stare at the quote for a while, a good long while, right? And you come up with all these excuses, but then eventually you have to believe and you have to do it, and embrace the excitement. But also, whenever I've gotten a little bit scared in life, it's always worked out because I've put myself in a very uncomfortable position, and it's always worked out to be great. So the more that I can get out of my comfort zone, generally speaking, I like to think I'm a smart person. I don't make rash decisions. So anyway, yeah, step by step, and we're going forward, and we're picking up the pace lately, simply because I'm listening to all the same people you're listening to, Lynette. Alistair McLeod, again, he can explain the banks. He can explain how the credit is contracting, and it's global. It's not
yeah.
just here in Eastern Europe. It's everywhere. And there are, you know, George Gammon, wonderful people who can break all of this down. Dr. Chris Martenson, yourself, got to be listening to these people because they can break it down for you, but ultimately then you've got to get moving on the mantra. And that's why I love the mantra.
Because it
It
gives
makes
you
it
a
very easy
guide.
to, yeah, that's your guide. Without that guide, you really don't get it, and you don't know where to start, but
hmm
you can kind of know where to start, and you can kind of start checking things off the list. And you might even be able to say, well, I've got part of this. Maybe you've got the community part figured out.
Exactly. That's what you do. You look at the whole mantra: food, water, energy security, barterability, wealth preservation, community, and shelter. And you say, where do I feel the most vulnerable? And
Right.
then that's where you start. And you do enough so that you don't feel as vulnerable there and you step back. That's the way I did it. I just kept stepping back and say, okay, I got this handled now, at least to a degree. Where do I feel more vulnerable? And that's how you do it. That's how I've done it, but it does. It takes a minute. And, so let me ask you, because we're talking about the solar, why did you put the solar in? You're in Bulgaria. Why did you put it in?
Well, because we want to not have to deal with the unknowns. And about 7 years ago, we were here, and I don't remember what happened or what triggered it, but there was a January where it wasn't unusually cold. There was nothing really going on, but suddenly the power company, which is essentially a nationalized power company, decided to double their rates.
Oh,
It
wow.
was like
hmm
2.5 times, right? So of course, it was on the news, and people were yelling and screaming about it. But then the government stepped in, and I guess the next month everything went back to normal. But for me, I was like, okay, that's the wild, wild west. I mean, that's something that I don't think that you would see in North America. And I wasn't comfortable with that. And then, of course, now with COVID and the last 12 months, we've seen what we've seen. I don't need to explain it to you or your viewers. I'm listening to what's going on in Germany. Things are in Western Europe. Things are a little bit
Right.
different in Eastern Europe. I have to say, better. There doesn't seem to be these fake government marketplaces for electricity.
Well, yeah.
There seems to
Mhm.
be in Western Europe. It's a complete
Well,
con game.
it's the derivatives that are actually, I mean, that's the thing here in the US and I think in much of of Western Europe, it's like the Wall Street that's controlling the price.
Yes, they've privatized it, right? So they've taken
Correct.
everything government, they've stripped that out, they've privatized it. They've created. I don't know if you listen to Yanis Varoufakis, the former um, Greek
From Greek. Mm-hmm.
finance minister, brilliant guy. Definitely
Yeah, he
leans
is.
to the left, but so smart when it comes to economics. And he can explain. He has recently, I forget what channel he was on, explaining these fake markets that Western Europe has created, and how this is really the problem in his opinion of why they're seeing the it's essentially a money grab, right? Same thing
Yep.
in the United Kingdom. It's essentially a money grab. So based on this very real inflation. So anyway, your question was, why did I install this? To make sure that we know for the next 15 years. I've calculated it, just got the calculator out. We're going to invest for about the next 15 years. The panels last for about 15 years. I can't remember what the battery lasts for. I think a little bit less, depending on how much you use the battery.
Mm-hmm.
And then, after about 4 years, I've calculated it out based on our energy consumption. This system will pay for itself. So for me, if you've got the money and that money is losing, what they say 8%, which is bogus. And here they say it's, whatever, 13%, which is
Right.
bogus. So you've got to invest in stuff. Now is the time to invest in stuff before, while you can, while your currency is is
Can
is
still buy
worth
stuff.
something. Yeah.
Well,
So it makes sense to protect yourself if you can from what they're talking about. They're talking about, crazy, you know, shutting down coal plants, and this is just scary to me. And now here in the country, they fired up their. We've been an energy exporter, an electricity exporter, so we've always used the coal plants here. And in Eastern Europe, they don't really play along with a lot of the Western Europe. Um, I don't know if I mentioned that before, but the
it's different.
a lot, it's different here. They have Romania, especially Hungary, Czech
Mm-hmm.
Republic. These guys
Mm-hmm.
have given the middle finger to Western Europe in the European Union on a lot of issues. On So migration into they protect their borders. They don't let migrants in. So we're kind of the bad troublemakers, I guess. And on the
Well,
energy front, we produce our own energy, so we do our own energy deals. We're not really into the whole, punishing Russia thing. It's very
right.
controversial here.
But are you only doing it because of the price rise? Are you not concerned about rolling brownouts, blackouts, and
All
other
of that, all of
limitations?
that. Yes, the real reason, well, the grid here, I can only speak to this country. The grid here, once you get out of the larger, even if you're in a large city, actually,
Mhm.
you can expect to be without power 2 to 3 times a month in the summertime when there's thunderstorms and windstorms and these kind of things around. They tend to shut down the grid for whatever reason. So the power outages are just, frankly, very annoying and very difficult to run a business on.
Right.
So, and not to mention, keep your refrigerators and your freezers going and stuff like, sometimes it's 30 minutes it's out, sometimes it's 3 hours. So yeah, being self-sufficient, having control over that aspect of it is, being your own producer of energy is
Yes.
not that big of a deal. I should say electricity
Mm-hmm.
is not that big of a deal. And I guess with you, you're learning about hydroelectric. And you might
Right.
say, Jeff, that's just not that big of a deal, given some of the technologies, given some of the methods. And you were encouraging me to, get the ponds going,
Get
right?
the
And
exactly.
for
And there's
fertilizer,
also
it's
water for
another option.
fertilizer. You can also generate energy off of it, off of the ponds in the
So
hydroelectric
it's,
way. So
yeah,
yeah.
yeah, and a lot of this stuff you can get help with. There are people who can help you with that. Here, not so much, I guess,
Good thing
but
it's easy. Well, it looks really easy. When we do it up north, we'll see how easy it is. But
anyway, I
still,
hope I answered your question about the electricity. That the reason that we're doing it is all of those reasons, right? To reliability of the electric is it's highly unreal, in my opinion, coming from North America. Being without power 3 or 4 times a month on average is unacceptable.
right.
So this is
Although it could
something,
get a
and
lot worse.
yes, right. So that's the other issue is while all this political wrangling is going on, and I've experienced again like 7 years ago just this random doubling in the middle of the winter where we were using electric to heat the place. So this is our highest energy consumption of the year. We're like, holy crap, what do we do? Well, you pay it. And
Well,
everybody was like, that's your choice. You pay it or you're cut off. And you had asked me last time I spoke, what's going on with energy poverty. And yeah, I checked around. They just cut people off. There's maybe 1 or 2 months they'll let it go. But after 2 months, it's that's it. They just shut down.
yeah. Well, we're seeing a rash of that on really a global basis. And what else? You were here about a month ago. What has changed? What has evolved? What are you seeing the difference just in that short period of time?
People are stocking up.
Are they?
Um, yeah, on just about anything. Again, the cooking oil is really noticeable. There's rationing, and we recently had a sale last week at one of the stores, a German store. And now this is sunflower oil. We're one of the
Mhm.
largest, if not the largest, exporters of sunflower oil in Europe. So this whole region is Romania, Greece. So there was a sale, and that just drove people into the store like crazy. I just people filling up, and again, there's still limitations to what you can buy, but you could see different family members coming. And I don't know how they monitor, I guess it's by shopper. They can't really monitor by family, how much you can
Right.
consume and you
How?
can
Yeah.
buy. But Arpad, this wonderful interview with Arpad
Hmm.
that you had a few months ago, he described when he was in Romania, what the people here in Eastern Europe, they've seen this kind of
Right.
hyperinflation before, and they know how fast it happens, and they know the early warning signals that were being given, like rationing of cooking oil, like spikes in gas prices, gasoline prices. They've seen all this stuff before, and they are just buying and hoarding any kind of commodities like wood, lumber, uh, and the that doesn't certainly help. The prices are all skyrocketing, of course, some
Right.
legitimately and some illegitimately. There's a lot of
Yeah.
manipulation, but it's really crazy how people here, the pace at which people are buying things with their money. And you started talking about this. Okay, you turned up the volume on it probably, I don't know, 6 months ago or something like that. And so I've been paying attention, but my wife says, no, you don't get out enough, Jeff. She's like, people are grabbing things up. And actually, um, uh, and this includes metals. So
It
primarily
needs to
gold, there's
include
not so much
metals.
silver here.
Right.
Mm.
So primarily gold in Romania or Bulgaria, rather, not as much silver.
Yeah, for some reason, this region, Greece also, people here are into gold,
Hmm.
and they use it similar to the Indians do. They will use it as a traditional wealth preservation tool.
Right.
And because they have seen in the 1980s, I mean, think about it. I was a
It's not that long
teenager
ago.
in the 1980s. It's not that long ago. So it's um, it's just, maybe for some people who might be listening, it's like, wow, the 1980s, that was a while ago. Not really. If you went through something like that in America, we went through the opposite. It was quite lovely in the 1980s.
Well,
So it
because
was a boom.
well, kind of, but I mean, everybody always refers back to that period of time, but what they don't talk about, nobody really talks about this except apparently, like me. I mean, there are a lot of people that are absolutely brilliant at the macro, but what they're missing is that this is a currency life cycle issue. And that's what ultimately it's that loss of confidence that the public has that ultimately sends us into hyperinflation. And it's the central banks and the governments that set that ball up. So in the
Yes.
80s, what we had a boom. It was the greedy 80s, right? And dynasty, and everything was about wealth and money and all of that. And it was a distraction. And they allowed people to make a little bit more money so that they didn't realize that we just shifted our whole standard of living and globalization. And now I don't think we're in complete deglobalization, even though that's what they're talking about. I think that globalization could potentially be morphing. What do you think about that? Can you see what I mean by that? Into a more, what I see, it was a corporate globalization that shipped jobs to the cheapest place for the workers, right? And all of the cheap money, then like the US and China's currency being pegged together so that corporations could determine, oh, well, this is how much I'm going to make on that. Now we're in a period where the supply chains are broken and it's deglobalization, but at the same time, you're seeing again synchronized efforts, which we've really seen since 2008 between governments and central banks. So
Again, in Eastern Europe, I'm almost excited to say that this region, I'm glad to be here. That's why I'm excited to say, but this region has been rather self-sufficient until the last 40 years or so, where we've seen, I mean, imagine a world where credit is a credit card or a loan for a home is new,
yeah,
right? This only became mainstream the last 20 years or so. People, you know, were able to, on a mainstream basis, get a loan for a car or go shopping on your credit card. I mean, when I first came to the country 21 or 22 years ago, you couldn't use a credit card. I don't remember if you could use a debit card, but it was just not accepted. You had to walk around with cash, which I couldn't. It was horrible. I didn't like it at all. It wasn't convenient. So,
it was actually
and
wonderful, but it wasn't convenient.
right, yeah, I have mixed emotions.
Right.
It's really strange, but anyway, the region seems to be positioning, and I think I had mentioned earlier that the east of Europe has never really gone along very much with the
Mm-hmm.
west of Europe. They've been forced to go along. Greece is being forced to go along. Italy in the south is being forced to go along by the bankers. And but generally, when it comes to, I lost track of your question. The self-sufficiency of the region, we do produce our own stuff to a large degree in terms of the basics, but then we have imported, the food from the Netherlands, for example. 20 years ago, you couldn't get an avocado, you couldn't get a
Right.
mango here. You could get the most delicious fruit that you could get was a banana 20 years ago. Now, I mean, literally, you couldn't get, like, you'd have to go to the mountain to pick your raspberries. You have to go to the mountain to pick wild blueberries, and people did.
Mm-hmm.
So now when they've got, the new blueberries, the new raspberries coming from the Netherlands or Germany or wherever they come from, I don't even know where they come from. We don't need those. We'll eat them and they're cheap, but the people here don't necessarily. Does that make sense? I don't, your question was globalization and
And
deglobalization.
deglobalization, but you brought up something that I think is really interesting because we started here with the credit cards without anything behind them in the 50s. We really started to convert into a consumer driven economy in the 20s. So you're saying that in Bulgaria it was just 20 years ago when they started the push into a consumer driven economy with the credit cards.
Like an advanced payday type of thing, right? Those as well. There were no places where you can go pay crazy money to get your pay advanced for a week. All that stuff, easy credit, places you can walk in. None of those places existed. Yeah, it's
So
all recent.
So, what is, I haven't really looked at this, and maybe you know more about this. I mean, you're there. Um, what level of debt does the normal Romanian have now? And and are the interest rates rising over there on revolving credit? And how is that impacting people?
I don't have the data on that. I think you've seen the data on um, I hope you've seen the data on uh, was it variable rate insurance or
Hmm.
variable rate mortgages?
Mortgages. Hmm.
And all I remember was that Australia was like 70% or something crazy. And we don't
Yes.
even rank on that. But there are some European countries on that data chart. But um, I do not have a good feel for that. But what I can tell you is that we've got people across the street from us, and I'm like, these guys, that looks like a new ATV. Interesting. And I kind of know what they do for a living, and I'm like, a new ATV, and interesting that they well, it's purchased on credit. So I almost don't want to know what the rate is, but I actually don't have any information or data on that and how exposed Bulgarians are to credit. Now, the Turkish, how they feel about credit. They use the word evil. And we do have a good, Turkish population here that are some of them impoverished, some of them quite wealthy. So some of them middle class. And yeah, you don't see them maxing out on credit, it seems. But I don't have a good answer for you on that in terms of is that your question, the
I'd be
exposure of people here?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I would be curious because 20 years is not really all that long. And so if you equate it back to the US, that would have been between the 50s and the 70s here. And then, of course, the system cracked and broke. But what are interest rates doing in, in your region? And how do you see that impacting people? Because the 2 year here is really, really close to 4%
Yes,
right
it's the
now.
same here. So all the European banks are here. So that's one thing we really don't have much of our own, the Eastern Europe doesn't, they have small banks, but it's really all the German banks and UK banks. And so it's pretty much the same in terms of home mortgages and second mortgages and those kind of things. What I don't know is what's the fixed rate versus the um, variable rate, right? I think that's the real
Well, that, and do you know
problem.
how long the mortgages are? I mean, here it's pretty normal to have, thank goodness, a 30-year fixed rate,
Hmm. I
right?
don't know what it is here. Yeah, I don't know.
Because a
I
lot
wish
of
I.
times in Europe it's a 5-year loan or maybe a 10-year loan. It's
Yeah, that's what I was just going to say. What I hear most of is 10 years. That's the number I mean, I don't have any hard data for you, but that's what I
right.
hear people making investments of 10 years. And that's the, looking into paying it off within 10 years. I think generally speaking, people here are leery of, you know, this guy's got his ATV, but they're going to take it, right? The minute he stops
He stops
making
paying.
payments,
Mhm.
right? So, and that's a, so when you do that, I think people have this awareness that I've got my job. And if you're working for the government, you might go get that extra ATV. You might get, whatever it is, something frivolous for yourself, thinking that, you've got a government job and that, you're more comfortable with with being in that position. But I don't really understand how exposed people in Eastern Europe are but they do seem very, unlike Western Europe, which lives on credit. People here don't seem to live that way.
And that's actually
Mainly,
reasonably new for people even in Western Europe. It's more common all the way over here in the good old USA because we've been working on it for so much longer and we didn't have those walls to break down in consciousness on credit and debt.
what has me concerned is the well-being for other people also, generally. In you know but for me, what keeps me up at night is speed, trying to get these things done as quickly as possible. But also the days are getting shorter. We had a cold snap now, and everything I'm hearing about coming out of Western Germany is just Western Europe is just frightening, and UK,
Mm-hmm.
it's frightening. I
Yeah.
mean, some of this I wonder, the okay, so let me give you some numbers that I just got. I think it was Bob Moriarty is reporting that the Swiss are saying if you go degrees Fahrenheit, 3,000 euros. I mean, these people are crazy. German electric bills
Yeah.
have gone up by 8 times. And when we say that the German electric bills have already gone up 8 times what they normally are, um, that's 7 times what people are paying in the US. So
Yeah.
France is up 10x on their electricity bills. And here's the crazy part, Lynette, the government is subsidizing all this. And the same thing I guess is going on in UK. They're saying, the government will subsidize more money printing,
Well,
more money printing,
and
and
who
just
ultimately pays the subsidies? It's the
right,
taxpayers.
right.
Government generates money through your taxes. And that's what people, I think there's always a disconnect. Well, the government's going to do this or the government's going to do that. Well, it's the government spending your taxpayer money. Taxes have to go up. They have to. And well, do you think, well, that is clearly why the German government has nationalized 3 of their
Right.
utilities.
I think this is the end of the European Union. I think the energy stuff is really going to take it apart. The union is barely holding on. Like I mentioned, Eastern Europe generally doesn't want anything to do with these guys. Southern Europe as well. That's why I like Yanis Varoufakis. He walked out as the Greek
Yes.
finance minister. They told him, "Here's the game you're going to play with the Germans, and we're all going to get to eat." And he said,
Nope.
"No thanks. I'm not your guy." And he walked out. So, and they just got some other clown to go deal with the the German banks, right? And they did a deal. So, you know, to some degree, our neighboring countries, specifically Greece, what's going to happen? Um, they are not in the same position that we are in terms of debt, national debt.
Too true.
And how bad is it going to get there? Because we rely on them. We go there as tourists once in a while, but we get a lot of our fruit, oranges, and a lot of fruit from there. But I'm very worried about the European Union.
Yeah.
I'm increasingly worried about what's going on in Ukraine. I don't see anybody talking about peace. I don't see.
Yeah.
I see a lot of reports, credible reports of Boris Johnson having nixed a peace deal, and I just see more weapons being poured in, poured in, poured in, poured in. I see the Russians ratcheting up, you know, their threats essentially. They're
Mm-hmm.
cutting off the gas. I just
Yes.
don't see that going in a good direction. It's very close to here. And people are more and more refugees are coming. The people here are starting to get a little bit crazy with all the refugees flowing in. We're getting a lot of illegal migration right now. So it's where to put people, who subsidizes these people, and what are the ramifications of all these subsidies. Free
Right.
money, free money, free money. We were very lucky where we are. We almost became flooded, but we had 200 houses underwater very close to our home here
Oh wow.
from a large rainstorm, basically one of these 800-year rains.
Oh no.
And,
Mhm.
you can see people are quite angry with the subsidies, you know, millions and tens of millions of subsidies for Ukrainian refugees who deserve help and need help. Again, these are young children and older
That's
grandmothers
right.
primarily.
It's the young and the
They need
old.
the help.
Mhm.
They got nowhere to go. They got no money to eat, or they burned through the money, whatever money they had. But, um, there's lots of money for them, but there's no money for these 200 people, these 200 homes. They literally gave them
Yes.
300, I think it was 300 leva the other day. I don't know, I can't believe it. I think it was this morning on the news. They gave them 300 leva, which is the equivalent of $155
For that's supposed
for
to
that's to
help them
offset
to their
no more home, no more home. Home is gone. It was, completely up to the roof in water.
oh,
Many of these the walls are made of clay, so literally gone. And, you know, that's what worries me is governments don't not taking care of their people. And civil unrest,
is
Bob
that
Moriarty is
rising?
saying, not here, but I just, in some of these larger European, I feel safe in Eastern Europe. I really do.
Hmm.
There's not a lot of civil unrest here because we don't seem to be experiencing, we are experiencing the inflation. The gasoline prices are way down. They are back to just above the pre-COVID levels
Wow.
of about $5.80 a gallon.
Hmm.
And by the way, that's low here.
That is low.
Um, we were paying about $6.70 a gallon. Greece, we took a trip to Greece. We were paying $13 a gallon in Greece a couple months ago, if you
Wow.
can even imagine that. But people here, and again, by the way, when I say the gas here right now is $5.80, that's a low number, very low number because of the surge in the dollar's strength. So when I'm doing this conversion, the dollar, as you've been explaining to people,
Right.
the strength of the dollar is able to buy more leva or more euro. So, but I'm still very worried about just people in general, civil unrest. I feel
Hmm.
safer in a small village as you do in your bug out, but
It's true.
I I feel safer in a place where the cold season is shorter in Southern Europe generally, and we are able to grow our own food, and we are growing our own
That's
food. Where
key.
we have rabbits, we have chickens.
Hmm.
So I have a couple of geese. I was given as a birthday gift last year. So, um, you know, we are moving into self-sufficient mode increasingly, but I'm just worried about what are the ramifications of the European Union falling apart? What are the things that we
That's
do
going to be,
enjoy?
that's going to be huge. But, honestly, history would tell us that was an absolutely failed experiment to begin with because you cannot take all of those different economies and peg them together. I wanted to go
Yep.
back to how you said, because I think people need to be aware of this. It really is about preparation and it really is about security. And you said that, people, what you've noticed, the change in just a month is that people are accumulating a lot more things. You can't accumulate strawberries because they have a shelf life, right? So a lot of these things do indeed have a shelf life. And you also mentioned that they are accumulating more gold than silver. So can you talk to that a little bit more? And because of their
Commodities.
experience with the
Yes,
monetary.
commodities, anything that's a commodity. I don't see any food. Well, yeah, I guess the cooking oil would count as that. Um, but I think what people are doing is they are preparing to abandon currency, to be honest with you.
Mhm.
We know in Eastern Europe I don't personally know because I'm an expatriate. I don't know if I've said that word enough, but I know some people in comments on the videos are like, "Who is this guy?" I'm an expat. I'm an American citizen living in Eastern Europe. But the people here have done barter before. I mean, the village I live in is functions almost exclusively on barter.
Does
Um,
it?
that's the community part of it, right?
Yes.
So I think when you say the deindustrialization, first of all, I think nations and states are going to rely on themselves more, and we're already starting to see it, and keeping what they want. You know, kind of like California, they keep all the good wine in California. They don't send much of it out, right? But I think what's going to happen is already happening, and people are stacking metals, particularly here it's gold, and they are. Some people are turning in their gold because they don't have the cash. They don't. They're having a hard time making ends meet, so they're having to cash out, which is very unfortunate. But
Hmm.
people are preparing for they're openly talking about like if we're going into these places that are dealing in building materials of all
Hmm.
kinds, plumbing, electric,
Hmm.
but also the wood and cement and all these, and the prices are all over the place. But the people are generally unloading their currency, and I'm talking about um, the retailers, right? They
Oh,
want to, they're trying to move as much as they can, and people are coming in and just unloading their currency because of the inflation. It's that simple. So I think the inflation here seems to be, you know, tamped down by these gas prices, but nobody here expects that to last.
right.
It's kind of
The other
impressive how
prices, are the other prices going up? It's just the gas prices, and that makes the
no,
normal
everything else,
person.
the food has leveled off, and the commodities, the building materials have always been like you get crazy numbers all over the place, mostly high. Generally, people are preparing for the extreme devaluation of currency. They've seen it before. They've seen the early warning signs, whether they're older, especially the older folks and the middle-aged folks,
Yeah,
they've seen it before. And they can explain it to the young people, and they're not stupid. And I mean, people are smarter than I think the governments give them credit for. Certainly, the European Union that thinks that people are not very bright, but um, people in Eastern Europe have been through this currency collapse stuff before. Not a
so
full collapse, but
well,
hyperinflation.
well, hyperinflation, and then you go into a whole new currency regime. And that lasts as long as it lasts, and we're at the end of it. But this time it's global. It's not just one country here or one country there. And we're going to wrap this up, but there was a very interesting study. I don't know if you saw the piece that I did on the two recent IMF reports. There were two September reports,
Yes.
and one where in the past they've always talked about the interconnected nature of the financial system, but this time, for the first time, they took a look at the full interconnected nature: imports, exports, investments, the whole nine yards. So, I mean, do you think it's going to matter where the collapse that cannot be papered over is going to start?
That's what keeps me up at night. You asked me earlier, what keeps you up? I'm like, that, because I listen to you and I understand thanks to you,
My
that worries
pleasure.
me because Lynette Zang is not some crazy person who doesn't know what she's talking about. You've studied this your whole life. And by the way, Lynette did not ask me to say all this, so I'm sorry, Lynette. But
It's okay.
you,
Thank you.
you know, you do a very good job. First of all, like you said, you don't have to believe me. Do your Dr. Chris Martenson always says, do your own research. And that's basically what you guys do, what you and Dr. Chris do. You
Yep,
guys take the research, you put it into, and it's pretty actually plain language that they use. It's not that technical. And you
exactly.
just break it down line by line and you kind of color it in with some examples. When you go through that report, you're like, look at this, look at that, look at this. This is the evidence that we have for what they're describing, and then what they're describing potentially happening and opening the door for essentially the merger of private banks into into government banks. and they're just talking about it right in the open. So what does that mean for us? You and I hope we'll be alive when this shakes out,
Well,
because
I'm
I
not
don't think
going
it's going to be.
anywhere.
Yeah, me neither. But I mean, I'm worried about the kids and young
Hmm.
adults and people who are, you know, it's just not going to be the same place. And I think, you know, get educated, definitely go to school, get educated, but you better have a skill. And that's one thing that I like that you keep saying that has been challenging for me. I mean, how can I take my skills and how can I use my skills in a world of barter? And my wife is already beginning to do it as a doctor here in the village, and she'll continue to do that. So
Right.
you have to have, and you don't have to be a doctor. You can do woodwork, you can do metal work. Her
You
father was
can
a
lay
metal worker, so
irrigation, you can be a farmer, you anything. You can be a writer, you can, so there's always a way to translate your skill sets
there is,
into
but
a
you have to
barterable form.
figure it out. Yes,
Yes.
yeah, you just have to figure it out. And I'm trying not to panic, as I think about this future world and see how I can position to, protect my wealth, which ITM has helped me do, and continue to stack silver and whatever. Continue to protect what wealth you have, but also how do you you know get rid of your currency? And if you need something, then buy it. If you really need something, now's the time to buy it.
Right.
So what are you waiting for?
Because
Guns, gold, and the garden, right? Is that aren't those
exactly.
the three G's?
The
I
three
think I think
G's.
that was Gerald Celente, right? Guns,
Yeah.
gold, and garden.
Gardens.
I think.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. 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 And that's what he has too. And that's certainly what I have too. Well, this has been great. Thank you so much for coming on and keeping us updated. And I look forward to the next time, and hopefully it won't be horrendous the next time. But who knows? We're in a very
It's
precarious position. And actually, what they talked about is the world. This was, I think it was the chief security secretary at the UN. I could be wrong about what his position is. But he said this morning the world is in peril and paralyzed. That's not a good
I'm
place
sorry.
for
Who
the
who
citizens.
said that?
He
The
was
year?
some high. I just saw it as I was coming in for to film this. So it's some big wig at the UN. The world is in peril and
Oh,
paralyzed. Yeah,
he made other statements. I think he's a former chief security officer,
I think
if
so.
I
I
remember
think that's
correct,
who it
something like
was.
this. He's come out and he's made a couple of other statements that are very bold, and I can't remember what they were. This is just breaking in the last 24 hours, I think. Yeah.
Hmm. So,
Yeah.
I think it's absolutely true. And when you hear it over and over again, because we are hearing it from those at the top, it is really a warning that you better get yourself prepared.
They
So,
they are they are openly talking about everything they're going to do and why they're doing it and what the options are. So
they're getting us
yeah, and
prepared.
and and none of it's good,
No.
right? None of it's good. And people are saying yes, there will be civil unrest. And
Oh yeah. That's right.
if
That's
you
been
look at
rising.
what Trudeau keeps saying, um, he's got a plan for that, and he's already shown what the plan is.
Thank you.
So
Absolutely.
stay safe, like you say, stay safe out there. Stay, protect yourself, stack while you can. Um, get your garden, get your gold, get your silver, and get your community lined up. And if you can be self-sufficient with energy, you'd better get it done. Get it done, get it done, get it done. Oh
That
my
sounds
gosh.
familiar.
Yeah, we're trying to get it done. We're trying to get it done. And yeah, thank you for your praise and your being proud. I feel proud too. It's nice to have earned your positive feelings. And whenever I can deliver anything that's changing out here, just let me know if you'd like to speak again. And
Oh,
hopefully it'll be better
absolutely.
news. But I don't anticipate better news. But
Not for a
maybe it will be.
while. But yes,
So
I really appreciate it because it's so great to have somebody that's actually living over there rather than what we typically get here because we don't really get the truth.
boots on the ground, right? Yeah.
Boots on the ground. And I hope you've gotten as much out of this today as I have. And until next we meet, please, you want to do it with me? Because you know it. Please
Be
be
safe out
safe
there.
out there. Bye bye.
Cheers.